guys, it's Kelly and today I've got a nail polish 101 video. It's been so long since I've done one, but a ton of you guys have been requesting that I do a nail polish stamping 101 video, so that is what I'm doing today. I've been trying to get more into stamping anyway, so I feel like this is just perfect timing. We have so much information to go over today, so let's just go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to be going over the absolute basics of stamping. So we're going to talk about what it is, what kind of stuff you need, and basically how it works. So if you guys haven't heard of nail stamping before, basically it's a process where you take an etched metal design and you stamp it onto your nails with nail polish using a rubber stamper. So it's really cool. It's a great way to get nail art. It's a fun way to get like super complex designs, and there's so many different ways to do it, and there's so many different ways to be creative about it. So I absolutely love it. I feel like I have not been doing it a lot recently, but I'm so into stamping, and I feel like just even filming this video has like revitalized me because I have so many stamping ideas in my mind now that I just want to do. So yeah, let's talk about stamping. Okay, so if you want to get started with stamping, there are a few tools that you're going to need. So obviously the first tool that you're going to need is a stamping plate. Like I said, basically just a plate that is etched in with some different designs that you can stamp onto your nails. So these stamping plates come in tons of different sizes and shapes. This is kind of the standard, the rectangular one, but you can also find circular ones or you can find square ones. There are some that are like as giant as a whole piece of paper, but yeah, they've got tons of different types of designs on them. Basically anything your heart can dream up, there's probably a stamping plate for it. The next thing that you're gonna need is a rubber stamper, and there's tons of different kinds. Basically, you just want a squishy rubber stamper. Yeah, those also come in tons of different sizes and shapes. Basically, it just depends on what you're into. The next thing that you're gonna need is a scraper. Now, this is honestly the easiest thing to get, and you probably already have something like this in your home. And the scraper usually actually comes with these stampers. So if you're buying a stamper, you're probably getting a scraper, but it's basically just a little card. So you can use a library card, you can use an old expired credit card, you can use just a gift card. It's really just whatever you have that you can scrape off the excess polish with. So those are the basics, but in order to do stamping, you also need pure acetone and you need Scotch tape. It doesn't have to be Scotch brand, it's just that kind of tape, you know what I mean? So obviously you also need some nail polish for your stamping adventures. Now this is where it gets kind of varied. You do not need to use a specific nail polish for stamping. However, there are stamping polishes that are meant to be used specifically for this, because you do need something that is really opaque and something that will cover another color completely. You can always use a really opaque polish in your collection, and if you're just getting started with stamping, you might not want to invest too much money in it, so you can always start off with those polishes that you already have. But I will say, I used to be a person who 100% preferred just using regular polishes, didn't want to spend the money on the stamping polishes. I felt like they performed the same, but since I started using stamping polishes, I have noticed a huge difference. I feel like the designs look so much crisper and better. So personally, my preference at the moment is to use stamping polishes, but again, you really don't have to. So getting into the stamping plate basics, there are a few different types of ways that you can stamp onto your nails, and there are a few different corresponding designs for that. So basically you either have your full nail design or you have your partial nail design. So basically your options are choosing either a sort of pattern or a scene that covers the entirety of your nail, or you can choose something like a heart or a star, or just something that's small enough to fit just on a portion of your nail. And then there are tons of plates that have different types of designs. You can sometimes find a plate that is just a full plate of one design that's continuous, and you can decide which portion of it you want to be on your nails. There are so many different types of things. Like, it's crazy how varied stamping can be. The majority of the plates that I get are from Maniology. That's just the place where I get the majority of my stamping supplies in general, so I'm gonna link that down below. I do actually also have a collaboration stamping plate with them that's all galaxy themed. Years ago, made this plate with them, and it was basically just to create galaxy nails without having to do any freehand art. So I'll link that down below for you guys as well. And I also have a discount code with them, so you can use the code Kelly to get 10% off your entire order. So yeah, now that you know all the tools of the trade, let's just get started with how to do it. So this isn't actually part of the process, but I feel like this is a part that confuses a lot of people. So when you first get your stamping plate, it might be blue like this, or it might be clear, but either way, there is going to be a little plastic protective covering over it. and you have to peel that off before you get started. I can't tell you how many people have asked me why their stamping plate isn't working, only to find out that they never peeled off that protective layer. So definitely make sure you're doing that before you get started, and then you can get started with your stamping. So of course, when you're getting started with stamping, you want to first apply your base nail polish color and let it dry. Now again, this totally varies. You don't even need to use a base color if you want to stamp over nude nails. That's totally fine. You can use one color, you can use glitter, you can stamp over an existing nail art design, so you can stamp over gradients, you can stamp over watercolor nail art, you can stamp over water marbling. Literally, the world is your oyster. You can do this however you want. So that's one thing I love about stamping. It gets so creative. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the variations that you can do with stamping at the end of this video. So let's just stick with one color right now. You do want to let that dry fully, but you do not need to use top coat. All right, so the next few steps actually have to be done pretty quickly. The way the process goes is you apply the polish onto the design that you want to stamp, you scrape off the excess, you apply the rubber stamper onto the design and let it transfer onto the stamper, and then you stamp it onto your nails. So I know that's a lot of stuff at once. Let's slow it down and take it piece by piece. But again, you are working with a very thin layer of wet nail polish, so you want to make sure you're doing all of this before it dries. But yeah, let's break it down. So first, applying your polish. You don't need to cover the entire stamping plate. You just want to cover as much as you need to so that when you scrape off the excess, there's going to be enough for your stamper to pick up. It doesn't matter how many times you scrape it over, just once is going to be enough. Then you press down with your stamper. You don't have to do it at any particular strength or anything. You just pop it down, pop it back up, and then apply it onto your nail. And the way that stampers are these days is they're so squishy, so you really don't need to apply much pressure. So the next step, you already have your design on your nail. There's a few more things you need to do. So obviously you're going to want to clean up, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Regarding the stamping plate and the stamper, you do need to clean them in between each stamp. So if you are stamping all 10 of your fingernails, you actually have to clean it up in between each stamp. So you do need pure acetone, and that is going to clean up your stamping plate. So if you're working with wet nails here, you can always use a Q-tip. That's one thing I do all the time. I dip it in some acetone and then I rub it over the design so that it picks up any of that excess dry polish, which is going to create that crisp, clear image every single time, so you're not having little crevices that are already covered by dry nail polish. Now with the stamper, it's another matter entirely to clean it. You absolutely do not want to use acetone on a clear stamper. It is going to ruin your stamper. So the way that I do this is I use Scotch tape. You can also actually use a lint roller if that's something that you have handy and you want to use up, and then you just go ahead and apply it onto the stamper, and then you peel it back up and your stamper should be totally clean. So you should never have to use remover or acetone on your stamper. Again, that is going to ruin it. As far as cleanup, I do have a whole video on how I like to clean up my nails, but one really cool trick that works specifically with stamping is if you take a piece of Scotch tape and you apply it around your skin after the fact, it's actually going to peel up that excess nail polish, which I think is so cool. It's never worked for me with like ombres or anything like that, but with stamping, I feel like that is consistently the easiest way for me to clean up any of that excess. And then of course, if you have any more besides that, you can just go ahead and use a little cleanup brush and some acetone to clean it up. All right, so that is the absolute basics, but let's talk a little bit about tips to make application and the process a little bit smoother and easier for you. All right, so one tip that I have that honestly I think is pretty life-changing, like this is actually a nail tool that has changed my life, and that is the stamping mat. So this is actually another thing from Maniology. I'll link it down below for you guys. Absolutely not necessary. This is an optional step, but for me, I think it really changed the way that I do nail art in general. I don't just use this for stamping, I also use this for nail art. Basically, it's just this nice little flexible mat that you can use, and you can clean it off with acetone, which makes it just so easy to reuse. You're not wasting scrap paper or anything like that. And then also, if polish dries on it, you can actually peel it up. So one thing about stamping is it gets to be pretty messy. When you are scraping excess polish off, you're trying to scrape it off of the stamping plate. So you either need to work over a paper towel or you need to work over something like a silicone mat to make it a little bit easier. And this is also a really great way to just kind of brainstorm nail polish ideas. They usually have these like little nails on them, depending on what brand you get, and you can kind of paint on different colors and see what looks good. It's also a great way to practice stamping if you don't want to ruin your manicure and you want to make sure that you're doing it right. So totally optional step, but I really honestly feel like this is a game changer. By the way, this is absolutely not at all sponsored. I am just a big fan of Maniology, and I think that's my favorite brand for stamping supplies. So the vast majority of the stuff that I have here is Maniology brand. Just FYI. All right, my next tip for you guys is make sure that you're not in a cold place. So one thing that I used to struggle with stamping all the time was I found that the polish dried on the stamping plate before I was able to transfer it onto my nail. And one of the reasons for that I found is that if the stamping plate is super cold, or if you're in a really cold room, the polish is going to dry really quickly and just not going to give you enough time to stamp it and then stamp it onto your nails. So make sure the room that you're painting in is just a normal temperature. It doesn't have to be super hot. You just want to make sure that it's not like the dead of winter with no heat on because that's going to make it a lot harder to do. Next tip is, of course, using stamping polishes. Like I said, they come in all different colors and formulas and varieties of finish. There are creams, of course, and there are shimmers, there are metallics, there are even holographic polishes, and there are holographic glitter polishes that you can get as stamping polishes, but also one coat polishes work as well. So if you have a polish that takes a few coats to be opaque, it's probably not going to work for stamping. You want to make sure that you're using polishes that can be seen over whatever polish you're using as your base color. And then my last tip is to make sure that you're waiting a long time before you apply your top coat. Stamping, just like any other nail art, does take time to dry. Even though it feels dry to the touch, it still can be ruined or smudged if you use your top coat too soon, so you just want to make sure you're being really careful with that. Maniology, actually, speaking of Maniology, because I can't stop talking about them in this video, they do have a no smudge top coat. When I first got it, I kind of thought it was a gimmick because I feel like every top coat is like a no smudge top coat, but something about this formula, I don't know what it is, but it does help keep my stamping from smudging. So this is what I use probably 99.9% of the time when I'm doing stamping, just because I know that this one is pretty much almost guaranteed to not destroy all of my work. Especially if you're doing something where you've already done a gradient and you're stamping over it, you really do not want that to smudge. So yeah, this has actually been a real lifesaver for me. I really do love it. I have tried it over regular nail art and I think it's also pretty good for that, but I do want to save this just for stamping. Another option you can do is using quick dry drops before you apply your top coat. I use the Zoya quick dry drops and I feel like they work amazingly over nail art. I don't know why I don't use them more, but I'll link that down in the description for you guys as well. It's just a really great way to kind of quickly dry your nail art so that you can apply your top coat without worrying. All right, so now that we've talked all the basics and we've gone over some tips to make life a little bit easier, let's talk about variations, because there are so many different ways that you can do stamping. And I feel like when I first got into it, I didn't realize all the different things that you could do. So I felt like it kind of almost made me feel stuck. But now that I know all these different little variations and types of stuff to do, I feel like it just makes stamping so much fun and it makes me want to do it all the time. So like I said before, you can do your stamping over any different type of nail polish. You don't have to do this over a cream. You can do it over a glitter. You can do it over a metallic. You can do it over a shimmery polish. You can do it over hollow. You can do it over a gradient. You can do it over a watercolor. You can do it over a water marble. You can do it over existing nail art. Like seriously, I cannot stress enough how many different options there are, which is what makes stamping, I feel like, so much fun and so unique. Like every single time you stamp, it's a different experience. If you aren't feeling confident about stamping over existing nail art, another thing you can do is you can actually use multiple colors to stamp with on one design. So one thing I absolutely love to do is applying multiple colors to my stamping plate and then scraping that off, kind of creating a gradient-like effect, and then stamping that over my nails, and it creates like a gradient stamp on your nails, which is so cool. Another thing you can do is, obviously, if you're using partial designs, you can stamp multiple different parts with multiple different colors, which is just another fun way to add color to your manicure. One thing that I've been really obsessed with lately is stamping the same design multiple times in different colors to create almost like a 3D shadowed effect. If you do it with a black background or if you do it with a silver background, then you're creating this just really cool, I don't know, three-dimensional look, and I just think it looks so awesome. One other trick that you can do is you can use tape over the stamper before you stamp it onto your nails to isolate a portion of the design. You can apply the stamp as normally, and then when you have your stamper, you can put tape over different portions of it and peel up any excess parts that you don't want on your nail. And then you go ahead and stamp that onto your nail and you've got a little portion of a design. There's also what's called advanced nail stamping. This is something that I absolutely have not mastered yet, but basically there's a trick where if you stamp a design, you can actually use this stamper with the design on it before you apply it to your nails, and you can color it in with a nail art brush and different nail polishes, and you can let that dry. Then you apply top coat to it and then you peel it off and it almost creates this like decal. But yeah, there are just so many different ways to stamp. It's a really fun hobby. I think it's so cool. I love all of the different different ways that you can do it. I love that even if you just have one plate, you can use that plate in so many different ways. Like you never even need to buy another plate. But of course, it's so fun collecting them. I actually have it's another Maniology product, obviously. But I have this like whole book of just all of my stamping plates. It's just really fun. I don't know, it's fun looking through and seeing all the different designs that you can do. There's even a stamping plate that I have that's just a French manicure guide. So if you don't trust yourself to do a French manicure perfectly, you can actually use a stamping plate to do that. And that same stamping plate also has like a little section where it's just a full nail that's just blank. And you can use that to kind of draw on designs. You can do an ombre with that. You can do a watercolor design with that. Like seriously, there's so many different ways to stamp. I think it's so cool. And the stamping plates are actually really cheap. So if you do want to get into stamping, it's not too expensive to get started. But yeah, I hope you guys found this to be a relatively helpful guide. I am happy to answer any questions that you have in the comments, so please feel free to ask. I am not an expert at stamping, but I do love doing it and I think it's really fun. I think it's a fun, different way to do nail art. So I will give you as much knowledge as I can. And if you guys want to see a stamping nail art video where I utilize some of these techniques, again, just let me know in the comments because I think that would be really fun. I would love to do just like a big compilation of just a bunch of stamping designs because I don't know, it's just so fun to play around and see what kind of different stuff I can do. Like I said, hope you guys found this helpful. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you have any requests for other nail polish 101 videos, I know I haven't been doing too many of them lately, but if there's anything that is pressing that you think is important that I have not covered yet, let me know in the comments. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I put out new videos every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday, and yeah, that's it. So I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Bye. Okay, fun fact, I actually did this video like talking about all the basics of nail stamping years ago, and it's crazy how much things have changed since then. Let me just tell you, when I first got started with stamping nail art, it was the hardest thing ever. First of all, the stampers were not clear, so you had to just guess where the design was going and it was absolutely miserable. Second of all, the full nail designs were not even big enough to cover my nails, which I have small nails, so I can't even imagine people who had bigger nails who weren't able to get those full stamping designs on there. And the stamping polishes were like not good. Like they were so hard to use. So it's just crazy how much easier it is. And you know, one thing I always thought, this is just a little conspiracy theory of mine, but I really honestly used to think that nail plates were not etched in hard enough to actually pick up designs because I thought it was literally impossible to do. Now I feel like it's so much easier to do. Like I used to think there was some sort of like crazy trick going on that like when people were stamping, they were just doing something else secretly because I was like, this is absolutely not working. Now stamping, like it's just so easy. You literally just buy the stamper and stamp it. When I first got started, the other thing besides it not being a clear stamper was you had to file the stamper down so that it was porous enough to pick up the design. I don't know. It's just, there's a whole thing. So yeah, if you're a person who tried getting into stamping years ago and you gave up on it like I kind of did, please try again because it has changed so much and I feel like it's so much easier now. It's almost like, it's kind of like how technology gets better and you're just like, man, I used to have to do XYZ to get to my radio station and now I can just press a button. Well, I don't know, do people even use, well yeah, no, everybody uses radio stations, right? I don't know. Am I showing my age here? Alright, that's it. I'm gonna talk to you guys later. Bye!